Well, Carl, you can take this in two ways. One is to just say it doesn't really exist or it's going to get resolved, and that's really becoming increasingly impractical. If, in fact, you assume that, then where you go is pretty easy. I think Apple and Google are the choices, followed by probably Facebook. And stocks such as Amazon and Netflix, where you might have had some valuation concerns, as I have, become more attractive because you don't have the situation of risk in China. However, what's going on here is very, very high-stakes poker, and I think the likelihood that there's a near-term resolution is very, very low. And of course, Hawaii and 5G are in the middle of it. And I think at this point, I have to say that this is really something that is mission critical to the United States. 5G is an absolutely, we can't lose it technology. So the government has to play very big time hardball on this. And if there are financial ramifications on this, so be it.
Yeah, but Joel, I want to get you in on this because it seems like the Trump administration is making the argument that Huawei is not to be trusted just because it's Chinese, not specifically because it's doing a bad thing that they can demonstrate. So how does this end? Even if there is a separate trade deal to be had, I don't understand how we get past the Huawei thing.
Yeah, and that's the kind of problem. Like, so the Huawei scenario that we're looking at right now, and we've been talking about for only 2 weeks, it feels like months. It differs very, very much so from the ZTE situation of last year, where there was direct implications of ZTE and some of the wrongdoings. Versus Huawei, there is a little bit. What's kind of the Trump's play here? Definitely there's some guys whispering in his ear that if we don't do put in place steps and measures in place rather to kind of pull back some of Huawei's ambitions, especially in 5G, that the U.S. could kind of fall behind. On the flip side, the White House is walking down a slippery slope. And if were there any missteps along the way, intentionally or unintentionally, this could really, show some negative ramifications for years to come.
Larry, are we entering a tech Cold War, so to speak?
Oh, I think there's no question that we are right now. It's limited, but the situation, if you look at history, the Balkans was limited in 1914, and that blew up eventually, and that could be where we're heading. But the idea here is that we really, I don't think, can compromise here. This 5G, there's no question, is critical for national security, and hopefully, I think the best thing that's going to happen here is China goes its way on 5G. And we go our way, but there's no chance, in my opinion, while this party is in power, that there's likely to be compromise on this. So we're going to probably do it without Huawei, and that's going to have earnings ramifications down the line for companies that are suppliers to Huawei, and it will have positive implications to people who are suppliers to the United States, companies that are developing these technologies. But right now we're in Never Never Land, and one thing about Never Never Land is it's not a good place to be when you're an investor. And hopefully cooler heads will prevail. But I think we're just in a long pause, Carl, until this gets resolved. Yeah. And it'll be resolved one afternoon or one evening, and then we can go back to our business. And once it's resolved, the valuations are just terrific on these companies, especially since the one thing that you can be real sure of here is interest rates aren't going up.
I hope I'm there. I hope I'm in the office on that day where this all goes away. Joel, the Times today tries to take a look at whether or not we can actually go our way and Huawei goes their way, as Larry says. They say even if Trump is successful in isolating Huawei, billions of bits of data will flow through undersea fiber optic lines and through satellites connecting the two competing internet environments. This is not like just slicing something in half, this internet world.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of agree with Larry. Under the current administration, it doesn't look like a deal is going to happen imminent. But with Donald Trump's track record, my gut is eventually we're going to see some sort of water type of down a deal agreement. A near-term resolution doesn't look in place, especially with the G20 just about a month out. But Trump has to think about a 2020 election. China really doesn't. They can play the long game, whereas here in the U.S., the administration doesn't have that luxury. And if the economy takes a turn for worse, and we all know we have a president who watches the S&P on a minute, but daily, hourly basis, something's going to get done if the economy deteriorates further. We've seen the confessions rise from the supply chain already. Hence, there's just really, people trying to figure out how to handicap this situation. Semiconductors, we could be at risk of a squeeze in the near term, but from investing in the group medium term, there's just no visibility. The hope trade has already been unwound that we saw kind of peak in early Q2. So I got to think there's still good ways to be long in this market, whether it's Cisco, Microsoft, and large cap. Look for the cloud SaaS complex as well, or even like the fintech payments. There's still great secular growth stories in the U.S. So my advice, just avoid the semiconductor chain until we get some resolution.